Hello, hello. Dr. G here, Imaginarium. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Here we discuss the psyche, mental health, relationship to imagination in all its forms, stories, movies, dreams, all of it. You have found yourself on part 6 of my Unlocking Your Dreams series, the last of the second trilogy before we get to the advanced stuff. So prepare yourself because I'm here to bring you the highest quality content using the lowest quality equipment. So here in part 6 today, we're talking about the animus and the anima. And just like the divine child, which is what we talked about last video, the persona and the shadow from other videos, this is a dream character. Now, if you'll remember, dream characters are personifications of inner dynamics or current life situations. Most often, it's a combination of both. And therefore, what the psyche is trying to do is create a story about who you are using these characters as major players in your current life situation. So, okay, if we're going to say that an anima or animus character is one of these, what's special about it? What is it about a particular character that makes it an animus or an anima figure? And the answer to that question is that an animus or anima character will have some kind of connection to intimacy and attachment, but in a metaphorical way. In other words, what we seek outside ourselves and pursue with intense passion, for better or for worse, will be depicted in the guise of an anima figure. In its pure form, the animus or anima appears as a character who may be seductive or charming or inviting and drawing us out of our safe space and into the unknown or into adventure. It can be a figure which draws us outwardly or inwardly, depending on what the conscious attitude is. For someone who's extremely introverted, it's likely that the psyche will create a character that draws us out of ourselves and into the outside world. The defining feature of an animus or anima character is that it is sexually or at least romantically charged on some level. Thus, it is a character that is inherently uniting of instinct and ego at its basic function. That's what it's attempting to do. And because it uses in the inherently very emotional imagery of pair bonding or sex, it can be a very memorable character in a dream. Anytime a character in a dream shows up and it's presented as the dreamer's spouse or partner, I'm suspicious that we're seeing an animus or anima figure. But what about when it gets mingled? That's in the ideal case. What if it gets mingled with things like shadow or persona elements in the psyche? That's when things get tricky, because then the dream is about the ego seeking neglected or rejected aspects of oneself. If this gets projected onto a real person in a real relationship, that's a recipe for disaster. So we'll get into some examples of that in a minute. But before we get into that, I want to say a little bit about other sexualities, right? So classically, Jung defined the animus as a male figure in a woman, and the anima as a female character in a male. But that would be in the case of a straight person. What about in people who are gay, lesbian, and what have you? Well, in the way to account for that is the function is still the same. It's just that your sexuality, whether it be gay, lesbian, or other, or whatever, will factor into the imagery. Since the animus or the anima is a personification of how your ego is relating to non-ego, the sexual charge will align with the dreamer's own sexual preference. So, in other words, if you're attracted to females and you're a man, or excuse me, if you are a yeah, if you're a man and you're attracted to females, your anima will be female. Um, the anima refers to this function in a male, the animus in a female, but these terms don't need to signify any sort of rigid dichotomy in normal variants like LGBT plus individuals. Now, I think it's very easy to get distracted by all of that stuff, and it gets very politically charged in the conversations around that. But you don't really have to worry too much about that. Jung didn't account for that very much because of the time in which he was writing and all that kind of thing. But we know a whole lot more about LGBTQ plus stuff, and the concepts of animus and anima still fit in just fine with it. So at the bottom line, then, what we're saying is that there is a class of spontaneous images that represent the subject's current attachment to non-ego, and that will be personified as it'll be a personified character that has some kind of romantically or sexually charged quality to it. And from there, you can learn a whole lot about how the ego relates and all the problems that it might be encountering. Okay. So, just to break it down here, let's go through a couple of examples here. I've got 6 examples that I wanted to discuss with you. So, the first example is you've got a man, say, who dreams of a woman who is seriously hurt in her hands. He feels pity for her and is wondering how he might help her. And he gets the sense that he is supposed to be in a relationship with her. So in this case, because of the romantic charge, this is a character who would qualify as an anima figure. But just calling it an anima figure is not enough. We need to look and stick with the imagery to help us figure out, well, what is this saying then about this person's current state? Well, I would look at this and say hands. Okay, so hands are a commonly used symbol of sensing, the sensing function. So if this is an instance of someone who is, the psyche is creating a personification of an aspect of themselves that is neglected, then this would be a sensing function deficit. And that the ego in this instance is being drawn towards something that he is not normally known for. So this would be a dream that you would see in a man who didn't have a great sensing function, who was very intuitive, but was kind of lost in his head all the time and wasn't very grounded. Then what the psyche is doing is there's another aspect of you, sir, and that's damaged, and you need to reconnect with that. And that's why it's using the romantically and sexually charged imagery here, because the ego is being drawn towards this character. So you can learn a whole lot about the person by how the psyche depicts their current situation. So that's one. Number 2, a woman dreams of a man that she is betrothed to, but when he goes to her house, when he goes to his house to be with him, she can't see him, or he's got some kind of bestial quality to him. This is what I call a Beauty and the Beast dream. It's not a fairly common type of dream, in which case here we have another instance where shadow elements seem to be getting mingled in with the animus. In this instance, it's an exploration of one's shadow, but because it's got this romantic charge to it, it's got that pull, right? So it's about a dream like this is saying you're approaching a phase in life where you're being pulled or drawn outside of yourself, outside of your comfort zone, and it's a little scary. You don't know what it's all about, and it's sexually charged and romantically charged, and so it's got lots of affect and emotion wrapped up in it. And this could go all kinds of different ways depending on how the dream ends and where it goes from here and all this sort of thing. Okay. Number 3, a man dreams of a woman and he repeatedly rapes her. Then he wakes up and he's horrified. So in this case, it's easy to get distracted by the sexual assault aspect of this. And if you look at this like, say, a classic kind of Freudian interpretation that dreams are wish fulfillments, then, and that's kind of pervasive in the pop culture now. Like you're dreaming that because you want to do that. But that's not really, I don't think, the case. What it's saying here is that there's an element of this feminine side to the personality, and the ego is not treating it well. It is victimizing it and using it. And so this would be an instance in which the dreamer, because he's horrified, he's obviously got some kind of revulsion to doing that kind of thing, and he probably would not do that in waking life. But nevertheless, well, then why is he dreaming about it, right? So then I would look at this and say, what kind of sexual repression are we looking at? Is that an element here? Or another way to look at it would be those elements that he might classically identify as feminine, he is attacking and he's devaluing in this dream. How might that look in waking life? Remember, it's a metaphor, it's a symbol, it's not literal. If you take it literally, you get lost. So that's a lot of work to do in that instance there. If I hear a dream that presented like that, I'd say, okay, we got a lot of shadow work to do here. All right. Number 4, a lesbian woman dreams of an attractive woman who she considers to be loud and boisterous, which is the opposite of the dreamer. And this character in her dream is repeatedly embarrassing her. So in this instance, again, the fact that the person is a lesbian means that she's attracted to women. So this would be labeled technically an animus figure, even though it's a female. But everything else about it works still pretty much the same way. In this instance, it's a character who is presenting characteristics that are the opposite of what the dreamer feels that she embodies. And yet she's attracted to it, that character. Nevertheless, the character is embarrassing her. Okay, so this is another instance again where you're being drawn outside of your safety zone, but it's getting mingled with shadow elements, elements of oneself being loud and boisterous, or fear of being embarrassed or embarrassing, are being projected onto this other character. And so you wind up with this kind of hybrid shadow animus figure. And in that instance, I would be asking myself, okay, so what is it about that character in this dream that you feel like, what is it attractive about them? What is it that you may feel it might be lacking in yourself that you would pursue? Now, remember, I said earlier, if you project the anima or animus onto an actual person and then become fascinated or fall in love with them and pursue them, it's a recipe for disaster, because that person is an entire whole world in of themselves. They are not just a shadow of you. And what happens in those instances is what you're doing is you're getting into a relationship and you're trying to fulfill or fill a hole in you with somebody else. And they can't do that. And it's not really cool to be doing that. It doesn't, in other words, it doesn't lead to happiness. What you want is a relationship where you are engaging with someone else and you're interested in them and you're invested in their well-being for their own sake, not because they do something for you or fill a void for you. That's your job to work on and help balance yourself out for them. All right. Number 5, right? A gay man. He sees himself as very put together and very logical and organized, but he keeps dreaming about pursuing this skater type who is very attractive, but at the same time, he feels he's very goofy. He wakes up annoyed every time he has this dream. So another instance of what we were talking about before as a character who has the opposite characteristics of the dreamer, that in their perception anyway, they feel like they are the opposite, and yet they're being drawn to that. So here you can see another instance of this trying to complete yourself by having someone else fill a function for you that we really are tasked to do ourselves in balancing ourselves out if we are out of balance. Excuse me. I'm fighting off a cold, so I apologize that my voice sounds weird. It sounds weird to me anyway. Okay. But the fact that he's attracted to this character tells the tale, and that makes it an anima, even though it's a male. It's just because he's gay. That's why it's a male appearing anima figure. So, and last one, number 6. Let's say you have an older man processing his own sexual trauma, and he dreams that while he's still married to his current wife, he's also married to another woman, but this other woman is extremely sick. She needs constant medical attention, and he wakes up very confused by this dream, like trying to make sense of what's going on here. Here's a little bit more complex situation because, again, because we got characters that are labeled by the psyche as this is your wife, this is your partner, Um, we have to look at the characters and figure out, well, what is the psyche trying to symbolize by doing that. So the current wife, that's an example, a rare one, of dreaming of a person who actually exists outside the dream world. And therefore, we shouldn't take them, because the dreamer's interacting with his wife on a daily basis. It's probably not an abstract um, figure. It's representative of the actual relationship with that person rather than an inner symbol. But the other character is an inner symbol. So what is she all about? She's very sick. She needs medical attention. Well, he's processing sexual trauma. So that's becoming personified as this other woman that he is married to. So you can see how it depicts this guy's predicament as he's trying to process the sexual trauma, and it's interfering on some level with his current marriage. Now, we don't have any more details about in what way it might be interfering, but the dream would show that in this instance. And we want to know more about what the psyche feels is or observes is going on in this case. So hopefully these examples give you a feel for what the animus and the anima are, why they would appear in spontaneous thought, why the ego non-conscious or the non-ego consciousness would construct stories about them, and what you as a therapist or a patient or just an interested individual or maybe a creative, what you can do with these kinds of story elements. And so that ends the second trilogy of my series. Next week, we'll move on to the advanced trilogy, 7, 8, and 9. And we will look at more advanced content in terms of understanding dreams. We're going to start with part 7, will be about the self and the God images. Until then, I will see you next time.